What if Belle Cornell from Is It So Wrong to Try to Pick Up Words in the Dungeon was Kryptonian Part 1? Let's dive right into it. And I'm back. Sorry for the long wait, guys. Not long wait. It was like a day or two. Sorry, I just had a lot of things going on. And I thought I was going to be gone for a long time, but I'm back. Let's dive right into this fan fiction. So if you have seen my commentary and you texted me, you give me support, take your time, man. Thank you for the support. But I wasn't gone that much. I thought I was going to be gone for a long time because it was something going on in the family and a bunch of other stuff, but nothing too much. It actually got resolved pretty fast, and I wasn't expecting that. So we're going to be diving head first back into the channel. And I already have like a crap ton of videos planned out and listed, and a crap ton of continuations to what ifs you guys have been asking for. So you will be eating good the next couple months on my channel. So let's dive right into this fanfiction. We start the story off with how Belle becoming Kryptonian would fit into this universe. How would him being Kryptonian mess with the dynamic of the gods and him being born the grandson of Zeus? In this world, we'll get switched to a offshore universe or a multiverse in a DC universe where Belle is born on Krypton. Belle is sent away from Krypton, being one of the other survivors from Krypton besides Superman and Kal, and what else was it? Supergirl. Now, if you guys want me to introduce other Kryptonians in this fanfiction, just tell me, or should Belle just be the only Kryptonian in this universe? Because I am going to be introducing other Superman-type characters and villains in this world, like characters like Lobo, Parasite, and other things like that. But we start our story off with Belle crash landing into this new universe. On his way to Earth alongside his cousins, because he would be related to Superman in this universe and being a part of the House of El, he would have been accidentally shifted to a different pocket dimension, a wormhole to put it precisely, a lot more different from the wormhole, Kara would have gone into, stopping her from catching up with Clark. He would have been sent about, and basically, Belle would have been around the same age as Clark Kent or Kal, him being about maybe like a month or so old, as he would have been sent to a parallel universe. The Is It So Wrong to Try to Pick Up Ghosts in the Dungeon universe, as he would have been sent into this world of magic and mystery and wonder, as Belle would have crash landed near a mountainside, as Zeus would have found him. As Zeus would have gone into the heavens and would have found him, and basically would have taken him in, posing as his grandfather and being his adopted family, as he would have raised Belle with standards and ideals and showing him the way of compassion and love, but also being a lot more, I guess, harder on those concepts, even more so, because he knew from the very first moment he knew him or saw him, he knew that Belle had incredible power that was just waiting to be unleashed. But he knew with all that power, it will be demons and creatures and beings that would come after him for those strengths and for that utter immense power. So he would slowly but surely use a spell with a sprinkle of divine magic to lock away his Kryptonian powers until the right time came, until he needed them to change the tides of the universe and the world, until the world needed him to be who he is, to be be what he is. So in this universe, we see that Belle would have gone through his entire life exactly similar the same, but everything would have changed when things would start to happen to Belle. We start our story off pretty simple with the episode 1, after we get the quick little introduction of how the gods came to Earth to find a little bit of thrill, I guess. But we get switched to Belle basically going into the dungeon as he would be chased by a Minotaur. During this time, Belle would have still been saved by, Lady Valentine's. As Belle would have been absolutely shocked by her beauty, but also him being kind of scared, not scared, but more or less, I guess you could say, embarrassed, as he would have ran off being covered in Minotaur blood, as he would have been making a panic in the, town square, as people would have been seeing a kid covered in blood running around frantically yelling out Lady Valentine's name. They all thought he was incredibly damaged, or just really heavily injured. But we get switched to him getting back to the bank area or the guild, as he would have been talking to, Miss Amy, or Miss Emmy, Lady Emmy, Miss Emmy, Lady Emmy, the elf girl. I think I got the name right. Miss Emmy. I'm gonna say Miss Emmy. I'm sorry. Correct me in the comments, Miss Emmy. So he would have been talking to her, as he would have asked her a little bit about Lady Valentine's, thinking she was beautiful. As she would have gone on, so you have a little crush on her, don't you? As he would have said, there's nothing like that. Well, she did say, well, the one thing I can tell you about her, Belle, is that she seems to be a part of the Loki Familia. And she's, I think, to my knowledge, she's a level 5 rank adventurer. And she's more or less one of the best swordsmen in the town. As basically what happened, or in the city. Basically what happened is, well, pretty much, Belle would have been kind of, excited, but also really happy to know more about her, to see that she was some sort of prodigy and some sort of, big name here. But we can switch back to Belle, as Belle would have made his way back after saying, love you to Miss Emmy, as people would have kind of, been like kind of confused, like, oh, snap, Belle try to get him some. But we see that Belle would have made his way back to the abandoned church area where Estia, him being a part of the Estia Familia, as we would get switched to him while talking to Lady Estia. Lady Estia and him would have shared a moment, as she would have embraced him with a huge hug, saying, I missed you, Belle, as they would have started to talk a little bit. Him eating potato croquettes, both of them, basically some leftover food from Lady Estia's side hustles or job. As Lady Estia would have told him that, I'm sorry you couldn't get a good meal, but as pretty much Belle would have said, no, it's okay. It's okay, Lady Estia. Doesn't matter what you got me, at least you got me something. As he would have been kind of charming a little bit. Kind of a Clark Kent charm, but what happened is, Lady Estia and Belle would have shared a moment, them staring at each other, but then quickly cutting that off after Belle would act ignorant and just start talking about something else completely. Now what happened is Lady Estia would have started to talk to Belle a little bit more, but eventually what would happen is, Lady Estia later that night would have checked Belle's stats, saying that he seems to grow somehow. As she would have noticed some sort of S logo on top of his stats that would have appeared for a quick second, but her thinking it was just her mind playing tricks on her or something. But later that night, we see that Belle would have gone to sleep next to Lady Estia, as before Lady Estia snuggled up on top of him, Belle would have walked out as he would have started to try to get some fresh air. As we see that Belle would have been, burning up. Belle thinking that something was wrong with him, thinking he was some sort of sick or something, as he would have tried to wash his face in the well nearby. As Belle would have started to walk around, it's eventually him being near the far side, as he would have been kind of confused on what the hell was going on with him, as he felt like he was burning up, like he was about to die. Him eventually falling on top of a tree, but him breaking the tree in two after trying to lean on top of it, as he would have cracked it into nothingness, obliterating it to put it more precisely, as Belle would have unlocked one of his kryptonian abilities, his superhuman strength, but not the durability that came with it just yet, as Belle's hands would have been kind of cut up. As Belle would have bandaged himself up later on in the bathroom, as he would try to keep it a secret. Him waking up later that night being literally snuggled over. I mean, Lady Estia was boobs and all over his man's, bro. It was no letting up. As Belle would have told her to not tell her anything, he would just kind of sneakingly, weasel away. As Belle would have made his way back to the dungeon, thinking he unlocked some sort of newfound strength or magic or something. As Belle would have started to walk, eventually he would meet up or bump into the silver-haired girl at the diner. The silver-haired girl would have given him one of his crystals that he got from, the dungeon to get money from earlier. As we would see that Belle would have been kind of confused, but not confused, him saying, thank you, as they would have started to talk a little bit. She would have gone on about how, so you're a level 1 adventurer, right? You're an adventurer, right? What's an adventure like you this early in the morning going out to the dungeon? Belle saying, I just have to, grind. I have to get on that grind. Come on now. So we'll see that Belle would have been, growling. His stomach would have been growling, as he didn't eat too much. Plus, he did, let's just say, exert a lot of force last night, pretty much obliterating an entire tree with minimal to no effort. But we'll see what would happen is we would see that, Belle would have been told by the silver-haired lady to take her lunch, basically her saying that you need it more than me, and that we're an adventurer, aren't you? You need your nutrition, right? As she would have been kind of flirting with him a little bit, as he unknowingly would have flirted back a little bit with her. As they would have said goodbye to each other, as Bell would have made his way back to the dungeon. What that would have happened, basically she says, you can pay me back by having dinner here tonight, right? As we see that, well, Bell would have humbly obliged, saying, I'll definitely be there, especially if you're asking, as that would be the flirty commentary he would have said. As we would see that Belle and her would have shared kind of a look, as Belle would have walked away, saying, have a wonderful day, and I will definitely be back here. We see that, well, later that night, not later that night, but later on, Belle would have made his way back to the dungeon. As Belle would have started to literally mow through these monsters like they were nothing. But eventually, him getting kind of tired, but out of nowhere, a monster would have lunged straight towards him, stabbing him in the leg. As Bell would have yelled in pain as a huge shockwave, his heart would have beaten. His blood would have started to pump. His heart would have started to race. Bell's whole body started to go into a frenzy of overload of pretty much strength. Like his body was on fire. So, just simple, Bell's whole body would have started to go into overdrive. His powers would have started to flare up, as eventually Bell would have looked at a bunch of mobs of monsters running towards him, or wolf creatures running towards him, as Bell's eyes would have flickered, as a huge blast of energy would have came out of Bell's eyes, lasering and burning all of them to a crisp, as Bell would have been confused on what he just did. Eventually, more monsters would have came, as Bell would have started to dodge and weave out of multiple attacks and pretty much lunges. He started to run towards them, as Bell would eventually get sucker punched by one of them, as their arm would have obliterated on impact, as Bell would have seen it yell in pain, as his body would have obliterated on impact, taking a lot of damage from even punching, well, Bell. But Bell also feeling a little bit of damage as well. Now, since magic is a weakness of kryptonians, Bell isn't completely invulnerable. Magical items, enchanted blades, and also magical monsters have a somewhat effect on Bell. As, let's just say, maybe like a mythical monster or a dragon bit Bell. He would still feel a little bit of damage, but he wouldn't be as damaged as a normal human would. Also, you can't forget to mention, Kryptonians have a lot of broken abilities on top of them having a type of superhuman recovery time. So they can recover if they are even damaged or like injured, kind of like vulture mites are, and yada yada, so forth, so on, right? So, and also, I'm not gonna give him too many broken powers that other Kryptonians have. Only thing I'm gonna give Bell is going to have the ability to do a solar flare move. And more, I guess, different versions of Superman and more later versions have a extra ability that allows him to do a solar flare power, that he can blast off a bunch of solar radiation at all parts of his body to make a huge explosion. Now, when he does that, he's about like a few hours of just being mortal and being semi-weak, or just being straight up weak. So I will be giving Bell that power, but he won't be using that until like the last minute, okay? I won't be giving him too much power off rip, and I'll slowly be giving him all his Kryptonian powers to come. But majority of the Kryptonian powers he's getting, half of them are going to be semi-weakened because his powers have been locked away for years, and also his powers being damaged by the magical energy everywhere in this world. So what happened is we would see that Bell would have started to lunge around these monsters, him eventually grabbing one of them and literally ripping them in two. As Bell would have started to look around, as he would have grabbed his blade and would have started to cut through him, seeing his body would have been moving on its own. His body felt lighter, it felt swifter, faster even. As Bell didn't unlock his superhuman speed or anything like that yet, but he just felt stronger, better. As Bell would have slowly started to find himself levitating just slightly, but not as much as you can say he's flying, nothing like that. But his jumps would have lasted longer than humanly possible, or would have lasted longer than, let's just say, the average athletic jumper or Olympic jumper. As he would have started to dodge and weave out multiple of these monsters attack, him using and spamming his laser vision a lot. As Bell would have started to kick all these monsters down, as eventually he would get overwhelmed, as Bell would have thrown them all away, as Bell would have chucked his knife as hard as he can, basically breaking the sound barrier on his knife, as his knife would have literally shish kebabbed or went through about 3 different monsters in one foul throw, it landing into the rock pillar or rock on the, well, pretty much walkway in the dungeon. We see that Bell would have eventually racked up a crap ton of pretty much, well, rocks and crystals in the dungeon, racking up a crap ton of money and getting a crap ton of loot. After that would have happened, we see that Bell would have made his way down, well, to the dungeon bank area, but him eventually coming back to Lady Estia and trying to tell her about what happened to him, and basically trying to break the news to her normally, trying to say, is it like, am I blessed or something by the gods or something? As he would try to tell her, but her getting still kind of pissed off that his stats have shown a lot, but also him talking all this mess about Lady Valentine's. As she eventually would storm off, just trying to clear her head, as Bell wouldn't have enough time to break the news to her lady that he somehow could shoot lasers out of his eyes, he's strong enough to rip monsters like they're nothing, and he's even faster and stronger than you ever could imagine. As Bell would have seen her walk away, but his eyes would have flickered blue, as basically we see that Bell would have started to see her step and walk out the, well, church area and walk out the front door, even though he was all the way downstairs. He could see through all of the floors, the buildings, the walls, through people. He could see people's anatomy, their bone structure, everything, their organs, their guts. Bell would have been freaked out by first glance at this, as he would have started to freak out on his way to the diner to eat with, well, the diner girl, as she would have told him to come and eat there later that day, right? Like I said earlier. As Bell's eyes would have slowly started to fade back down to his red pupils, as Bell would have been confused on what the hell just happened. Bell would have unlocked his X-ray vision, as Bell's ears would have started to, I guess, ring, as Bell would eventually hear birds chirping, and then carriages riding, and then people chewing, and then people yelling, and people drinking, and people running around, and also a mugging. As Bell would have heard something in the distance, as he would have ran over there, as Bell would have started to book it, as eventually he would start to see his legs start to pick up pace, and faster and faster and faster, and things around him would have started to slow down. As Bell's body would have propelled him at superhuman kryptonian speeds, as Bell would have started to book through the entire freaking area, as he would eventually find his way near, well, something that was happening. Some sort of girl was getting taken advantage of, some sort of black-haired girl, as she would get thrown around like a rag doll and trying to get beaten up on, as it's 3 muggers were about to say that we'll take some time with you, we'll have some fun, as Bell knew exactly what this was about to turn into. Bell would have super speed towards there, trying not to kill them, as he would have lightly tapped one of them, but him not really knowing his true strength just yet, as he would have pushed one of the demi-humans that were doing this to this poor lady into a nearby wall, breaking his entire body. I mean, almost killing the dude. As Bell would have gotten punched by one of the other dudes, but him not using any magic, his arm breaking on impact. As Bell would have grabbed the dude and would have chucked him up in the sky, as he would have landed on a nearby roof. The third dude would have shot, well, Bell with a magic bullet or a magic blast of energy, as Bell would have been sent flying into a bunch of crates. As the man would have ran off, as Bell would have super speed after him, as he would have kicked him in the back of the spinal cord, knocking the soul out of this dude. As Bell would have been kind of coughing up a little bit of blood, since he did take a lot of damage from that magical attack. But we see that Bell would have walked over, as Bell would have started to see his body in the moonlight, as he would have noticed that his body was more muscular, and he seemed to be taller. Bell wouldn't be as tall. I ain't gonna make him super tall, like 6 feet. Bell is like his average canon height, maybe like 2 centimeters taller. But Bell's already as semi-muscular as it is in the canon. But let's just say Bell has a lot more of a defined muscularity. Like his body's more like a mixture of I guess you could say Connor Kent, like Superboy from Young Justice physique, like pretty muscular, a little bit more defined and toned, right? Kind of like a year 1 Superman, right? Not too muscular, but still pretty strong. Like, actually, scratch that. He's more like a Nightwing physique. Bell's more of a Nightwing physique, more skinny and lankier, but also has a lot of muscle on it, similar to the more acrobatic muscularity, like Nightwing, Daredevil, and Spider-Man, kind of like those type of muscularities. So yeah, Bell's more like a Ultimate Spider-Man type physique to Nightwing physique, like pretty toned and defined with like a six-pack or something like that, right? So we see that Bell would have saw his body, would have felt stronger and better even more. As Belle would have looked over to the girl and would have helped her up, but she would have thanked him a lot, saying thank you. As Belle would have walked her to her house, telling her to be safe, as Belle would have found still had enough time to get back at the diner. Belle would have super speed towards there, but halfway there, his body would have basically lagged down as he would have basically stopped. Like his super speed just gave out or something. But Belle would have started to run back. Now, because of the spell, his powers will be unreliable, to put it simple, just to give it plot. Bell being literally Superman levels of strong is not going to be much plot or like stakes, but we get switched to Bell getting back to the diner and him still eating his feelings, or not eating his feelings, but still eating the catfish and the pasta and still talking to the silver-haired girl. Him eventually being thrown off after the Loki Familia would have shown up. Us getting a little bit of a tad, I don't even know why they showed a big ass small booty shot of Loki, but that's neither here or there. But we can switch to talking, and the Loki Familia would have started to talk, as eventually the wolf dude on the Loki Familia would have started going to depth about, oh, did you guys hear about that whiny little sissy boy that Lady Valentine said? Oh my gosh, this kid was covered in blood and he started running around and running away like a frantic loser. As he was trying to talk super horribly about Belle. As Belle would have heard this, as Belle would have been kind of peed off. As Belle would have tried to keep his composure, as Belle's hearing would have started to flare up again. As Belle would have started to get pissed off, as his eyes would start to flicker blue and red, as his body would start to tense up, and he would start to bend the spoon and break it. As basically Belle's body would have started to levitate slightly, but him being snapped out of it after the guy would have said something completely out of pocket about Belle, saying that he was a weakless, good-for-nothing bum, and basically started to just chew him out without even knowing him. Belle would be utterly and insanely peed off and just pissed off. I see Belle would have basically run towards him, saying, you better stop what you're talking about now. As he would have started to stare down the wolf dude as he was about to, he was about to pop off. Belle was about to do something he was going to regret. He was about to kill this dude. But Belle heard a voice telling him to leave, that he didn't want to do this. Belle would have super speed out of the diner, as everybody would have been shocked by the amount of speed Belle just, pretty much shown. As Lady Valentine's would have also been interested as well. As Belle would have super speed, as eventually his super speed would have, still gave out after Belle would have stopped and basically would have fell into the nearby forest. As Belle would have been absolutely angered, as he eventually would make his way back to the dungeon, as he would start to rip through these monsters like they were nothing in the dungeon. He started to rip through them back and forth, him eventually grabbing them and ripping them apart and throwing them and punching holes through their chest, as he would be racking up a crap ton of loot and all sorts of different things. Belle would eventually stop after him taking down a bunch of monsters and his body being absolutely destroyed, since he would still go up against other monsters that still had magical powers, and he was becoming more slower and laggier and choppy with his movements, as he would get monsters would got a few good nicks and scratches and bites on him, and still they're magical beings, so they would still damage Belle. Belle would have had some bleeding from his face and some cuts on his arms and stuff like that, as Belle would have just sat down there, just thinking about what has happened to him and how much he has changed in these last few days. In these last 2 days, he's changed. He seems to move as fast as lightning. He seems to be durable enough to take a full-grown man's punch and break his arm on impact, even though he didn't even move. He seems to be strong enough to punch through entire monsters and rip them apart like they're nothing. He seems to be able to shoot lasers or beams of magic out of his face, and he can see through things and see things no one else can. He can hear things that shouldn't humanly be possible, that are far beyond the power and strength of a demi-human, but they're hearing. And also his senses are heightened and well boosted up as well. Bell would have made his way back to the house to Estia, as he would have collapsed, as Estia would have told him, "Are you okay, Bell?" As he would have said that, "I need to tell you something. Something happened to me." And she would reply with, "What happened, Bell?" As long as we leave it up here, guys. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. As always, guys, have a blessed day. But before I go, what Superman villain or character should I introduce in this fanfiction? And if you guys want me to jump on a completely different anime series to do a what if on, just go in the comments. But yeah, so yeah, I do have a lot of videos lined up for you guys to enjoy. So I hope you guys enjoy this following couple months. And deuces, bye.